Right, this is a video showing how to use the detail cut files that we get with the Digimags. I only use them like for drawing and foiling. You can actually use them for cutting if you want to cut the detail lines in on some of the images if they've been included in the projects. But what you've got to remember is you would just get a straight cut with the blade, so you don't get all that detail that you would get if you was using a die, or the impressions that you would get, because it would just be a straight line. So I use them for actually drawing and for foiling onto the images, but as I said, as long as they are included with the projects, because we don't get the detail cuts with every single project that we've had. So I want to do issue 16, project 1, the pottering about, and the charisma that has the images that go onto the front of the card are the file C. So there you can see we've got a lot of images to add to the front of the project. So the first thing I do is we go back up into the folders. There's one called stash files. So you need to check first that if you want to have a go at drawing or foiling, have a look and see if we actually have the detail cut. And we do with this project. We have one file 1 and file 2 for it. So I've printed off my PDF. I've signed into Canvas Workspace, which is the online version. And I'm going to go and get the SVG file. And the first file I bring on is, if I go back up into the folders, is the actual project file, the Charisma cutting file, all right, which is this one at the bottom, file C. So I'm going to bring that onto the Mac. Now, for some reason this month, the images have had a solid black colour put into them. So if you highlight the file, go to the top of your properties here, click on properties, go to the top of that box, and that's the fill-in colour. Click on the arrow at the side and then just click on the checkered box. All right, and that will make the images visible. Now, if you don't want to, I'll just click anywhere on the mat so that you can see, and click on the rectangle. Now, if you didn't want these outlines actually drawn or foiled, and if you're not confident in removing the rectangle when you take the file over to your scan and cut, and you don't want this cut or drawn or foiled, right, you can set all that whole file to a cutting line. All right, so if you didn't remove this, it wouldn't draw it, and it wouldn't draw the outside of these images. Now, when I'm doing it, I actually like the outer line drawn in, and all depending where the cut is, you might not necessarily see all of it, but it's nice to have an odd little bit of colour and that. But if you want to leave this all grouped with the rectangle on until you get used to using the files, and you don't want this rectangle as a draw line, then you can set the file to a cutting line. All right, so I will actually leave that as a cutting line for now, just to show. So then I'm going to highlight everything and group the file. Okay, and we'll just move that out of the way, because now we're going to bring on the detail cut. So I'm going to go back into import my SVG, go up a couple of files until we get to the stash folder. All right, and we want the pottering about 1. And there's the detail. Okay, so we want to draw that, so we're going to set it to a drawing line and we're going to group the file. Same with the second one, highlight it, draw and group. And I'm just going to move them down to the bottom because we actually have a second set of images to bring on that we can draw. Say OK, select it all, draw, group, select, set to draw and group. Okay, just going to move them out the way slightly so I can see what I'm doing. Right, so bring on your Charisma cutting file and then just pick up these images and just place them roughly where they should be. Right, so that's where we know they should all be. Right, I'm just going to set that to back so I can work on these images. Close this down and then zoom right in to your mat. All right, and then you can see exactly where you need to line it up. Now, I used to do all this on the scan and cut because I really didn't want to know how to use Canvas Workspace, and and I was one of these as, oh, why do I need Canvas Workspace? I can do all this on the scan and cut. Until I started watching a few tutorials on YouTube, and then realised that it is much easier to line up these files and much easier to do the sentiments as well and send them to scan and cut. And I have actually done a separate video showing those. And then all you do is you just move the files around, right, until you line up with the cutting file. Right, so once you sort of see your lines smoothing out a bit, right, you've got them lined up quite well. Right, so for instance, I'll just show you. So if you sort of go too far, you see the lines are getting quite bold now, so you know that you've got to go the other way until your lines start to lighten a bit more. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So we're just fit to that so we can have a look at it all. All right, and then I'm going to click on the outer rectangle. Right, so all these are grouped, the individual ones are grouped, right, and the cutting file is grouped. But what I'm going to now do is ungroup the outer rectangle files. Okay, and then I'm going to save that in to Canvas Workspace so that if I wanted to use this project again at any time, then basically I've done all the hard work and I can just call that up at any time. So this was issue 16, project 1, and it's Charisma C, and it's for the projects called Pottering About. All right, so it's up to you how you name it, whatever makes sense to you so that you can find it easy again. I'm going to save it. All right, so that is now in Canvas Workspace. And then I'm going to download that onto my SNC because I have a Wi-Fi enabled SNC. You will see this little message come up now and again. So if you've got really tiny pieces of detail in there, it says some of them are going to be removed because they're just too small for it to be read. So you will get that. So I'm going to say transfer to my scan and cut, please. All right, so we've finished with the file on here. I'll set up the machine and then we'll come back. Okay, so we're over at the scan and cut. I've put my print on my mat, loaded my mat ready, and I'm now going to retrieve the data. All right, so as I said, I've got a Wi-Fi enabled scan and cut. So we're going to retrieve that. you can either, if you don't have a Wi-Fi enabled, you can send it via your cable, or if you've got a USB, you can download it from your computer onto a USB and then put the USB in the side of your scan and cut and call it back from there. All right, so there's my file. So the first thing I'm going to do before I touch my screen, because everything at the moment everything is ungrouped, is I'm going to edit and group everything on the mat. Okay. And as I said, I've already scanned the image, so we're going to zoom in and then just line up a rectangle with the print rectangle. And you can most probably see all the detail that's come over with that file. All right, so I'm happy with that, so say OK. Now, as I said, if you're not confident in removing the rectangle, if you haven't done this before, because I've set the outer rectangle to a cut line with the PDF Charisma as well, that will only cut, so you wouldn't get the outer line when you do your draw. But if you're confident in removing the rectangle, you can do that. Just saves wear and tear, as I said, saves wear and tear on the mat, saves wear and tear on your blade. So what I do is I will go back into Object Edit, ungroup, click on the mat to release the shapes, and again, don't move any of the images on your mat, because it'd be quite hard to line up again. Not a disaster if you do, because basically all you would do is you'd have to start from scratch and just send the file back over from Canvas Workspace. Use your select keys until, actually it's quicker, use the select keys, or if you can tap on the rectangle to grab the rectangle and then delete that, right, which leaves your images. So you just keep clicking OK until you get to this screen. All right, so as you can see, the images are in blue at the moment, which is your drawing file. So if I was to select cut now, there's the outline of your Charisma images. So that's why you have to ungroup everything before you send it back over from Canvas Workspace, if you wanted to remove that that rectangle, because if you sent it over grouped, it would remove the rectangle and all the outline of the cut file as well. So I know that's there okay. And if I set it to draw, that's in blue, so I know that that is all the detail that is going to be drawn. But as I said, if you're just not confident in that, then keep your file, the whole file grouped. But when you're setting the Charisma cutting file in Canvas, make sure that you set it as a cutting line, so that if you are drawing and foiling, it doesn't draw and foil on that outer rectangle. All right, because what I do to keep my print steady on my mat, I do my draw or foil first, and then I cut the images out. All right, so it's entirely up to you. I'm not actually going to go through the drawing on this particular one, because I don't need this sheet at the moment. I'm going to put that to one side if I need a project. But if you're drawing, I'll just take my cutting blade out so that you can see. Or depending what you're drawing with, if you was to use like fibre pens, I've got Flexi fine liners and the Brother fibre pens. You've just got to work out like your pressure that you want to use. So if you're using fibre, it's most probably a good idea to go down into the minus figures. So when I'm using my flexi liner pens, I'm usually on a pressure of about -5, speed 3, and that seems to work okay. But it is a bit of trial and error. You know, you just have to have a little bit of a practice. If you've got things like metallic pens or anything, you know, that's got a hard tip, then obviously you would need maybe to bring your pressure up a little bit more and go back into your pluses. All right, so this is how you change your draw pressure. So you would just bring that up into whatever pressure you need for those particular pens. It might be a good idea that if you've got some scrap paper and you've got a set of pens that you want to use, whether it be the brother ones, or if you've got the universal pen holder and you've got a set of your own pens, whether it's Spectrum Noir, they do the fibre ones as well, is have a little practice with them. It's always better to start off in minus figures so that you're not damaging a nib of anything. And if that isn't coming up on your paper, then you can sort of go up in increments until you actually get a nice clean draw on your paper. And then once you've sorted that out, if you've got a little book, you could put a note of what pen you were using and what your draw pressure was. And maybe if you just needed to slow you might have needed to slow the speed down a little bit if it's a very detailed thing where you just need the pen just to slow down slightly to get that detail drawn in. So you just work it out, and then at least you've got a reference to go back to for when you use them pens, and it's not sort of, you're not thinking, oh, what did I use? I can't remember. So that's a good reference. But as I said, if I was using fibres, I'm usually down at about -5. I foil all my images with the We Are Memory Keepers foil quill. So again, I do go down into some minus figures for those because I have a laser printer. So I don't need too much pressure on a laser print to get the foiling to work. So as I said, I would draw first, all right, leaving everything on the mat, and then when it's finished drawing, all you would do then is go into the select, and then you would set it to cut, and then it will cut the images out for you. And as you can see, as I said, I've removed my rectangle so that that doesn't get cut or drawn, but it's entirely up to you until you get confident with this whether you remove it or not. But if you're not going to remove it, as I said, if you're using Canvas Workspace, make sure that you set the Charisma cutting file to cut line only. And then obviously it won't draw around the rectangle, which is what you don't want to do, because you don't want to be wasting your pens drawing around the rectangle. But it won't draw the outline either of the images. Okay, so just before I go, I've got some images left over in my bits and bobs box that I have used to do some foiling on. So I'm just going to show you a few of the images and just see if you can see the effects that you can get. This was using, I'm trying to think, this was with a foil, and this is a holographic foil. All right, so you can just see the light is just catching that you get that that finish on some of the images. This was using copper foil, all right, on one of the leaves, and this was, I think, I'm trying to remember what some of these are. I think this was like a baby pink that I used to foil on this particular one. Another one, This was a green. This was very like a subtle light metallic light green, I think it was, to go onto the grasses. It's just giving you an idea of the different things that you can use. And on this one, I can't remember quite what that one is. That might have been a holographic foil again on that one, or it might have been the clear foil. But you can see it just gives a nice shine finish to some of the images. And this is one of the cards, finished cards. And on the girl, I've used a slightly pale pink on her. And on the boy, I used a very, very pale blue. And on the clock, that was, I think, I'm trying to think what that was. That may have been gunmetal foil or a very light chocolate foil that I've got. But it just gives you an idea of what you can add to some of your projects, just to give it that sort of extra little bit of finish on them. And it really is effective on some of the images, as long as we get the detail cuts included. And as I said, if you've got some metallic pens, this was the Couple in Love from the very first issue 1, and I just went round that with a gold metallic pen, right, and you can just see the detail that you can add into your projects. So just have a little play around, just experimenting whatever you've got. I mean, as I said, I foil everything, so I've got sort of like hundreds of different coloured foils that I try and use on some of the projects. But you know, if you've got coloured pens as well, and you've got the universal pen holder, it's just nice to have a play and see what different effects that you can put onto the projects. Okay, so I hope this has helped, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye for now.